Last year, our reps generated over $36 million in commissions, and I've got absolutely nothing to sell you. My name is Dylan Reeve, founder of Headhunt Talent Group. I make these videos solely to help other commission-only sales leaders within the industry recruit better, do it in a more ethical way, and do it in a way that is going to grow the industry in the long term rather than destroy it. With all that being said, the point of today's video is to go ahead and help you guys get new sales reps up and producing revenue for the company within 7 days. This is using a average ticket product. I would even consider high ticket, just not anything enterprise or anything with like a standard 6-month sales cycle. Obviously, we're throwing that out the window here. Now, when it comes to getting reps that are going to produce at a high level, now, the first and most important part where 90% of sales leaders go wrong is the pre-onboarding. And this is before we ever even get to onboarding a new rep and bringing them into our system. Now, what is the pre-onboarding? The pre-onboarding consists of 3 key or major components. The first part is certifying their character. Now, what we do with our particular recruits that we will place with companies is we have to certify their character in one of 2 ways. One way is a 6-day hell week where they have to really just go through the absolute ringer. I'll probably make a whole separate video on that. But what it does is it certifies their character. Think about the Navy SEALs, but for sales. Now, the other way is if you are a very successful sales rep already, you've got a very, very solid track record that we can check into, we can contact your employers, we can talk to them about your performance. Those candidates can then go and bypass our Hell Week. But there are very high standards for those candidates that get to bypass. However, the point being here is the concept. We need to certify their character before we actually put them into any sort of onboarding or offer them any sort of role, which is honestly something that I see way too many people, and this is where, again, most people get the problem wrong, just skip over it entirely in commission only. Because it's, hey, if this person doesn't perform, it doesn't cost me anything besides time, energy, whatever, which honestly, if you don't value that, that's a massive problem. But they're not going to have any hard costs, so if they don't have any hard costs, then oh well, it doesn't matter if they don't succeed. Which is a whole nother problem we can talk about in another video. I think we have plenty of videos talking about that. But after we certify their character, the next and most important thing is that we set extremely clear expectations. And honestly, the expectations that we set way higher standards in the expectations we give people before working with us than we actually do when it comes to start working with us. And that's because I quite literally want to scare you off. I want you to think that if you do this, you're not going to have a life for the next several years, but you will end up achieving everything you wanted because of that. And if someone is willing to do that and is willing to make that sacrifice, then they're willing to sacrifice whatever it takes in order to achieve that goal. So after you have set extremely clear, extremely hard standards or expectations, the last thing that is really important in the pre-onboarding process is just giving people a good idea as to what the next steps are and what the next steps are going to look like. So what happens is whenever someone makes a very big decision, especially people that have a lot to lose or a lot on the line that might be having a lot larger opportunity cost, well, they're going to have a ton of what's called cognitive dissonance after making that decision. So within the first 48 hours, they're going to be thinking about, is this the right decision? Should I, do something else? Should I just ghost this guy? All these thoughts are going to be running through their head. Now, if you don't want those thoughts to run through that person's head, then you need to give them a clear idea as to what is coming next. That way they know they are on the right track. Because imagine one scenario where someone tells you, hey, this is what to expect. And that happens. You now have a ton of confidence in this person. You trust this person. Now, imagine another scenario where someone doesn't even tell you what to expect. You just get thrown into something. And you've got no idea what's supposed to be happening, what's not supposed to be happening. there's going to be a ton of guesswork, a ton of room for anxiety to crawl in and creep in and make this person change their mind. After you've gotten the pre-onboarding right, that is literally like 90% of getting sales reps successful and adding revenue or cash flowing for the company very, very quickly, and oftentimes within 7 days. Now, in order to actually make this something that's a little bit more predictable and something that has substance behind it when it comes to preparing the sales reps effectively outside of just you preparing effectively, the next most important part is the actual onboarding itself. Now, the onboarding itself is super simple. What we like to think of it as is the first thing you need to do is you need to assess a candidate in order to really get a clear idea as to how you need to personalize your process in order to make this person successful. And that's the key, is a lot of people don't assess the candidate because they don't plan on personalizing that process to make the person successful. And quite frankly, when it comes to building a commission-only sales team, in 9 out of 10 models, you're looking at trying to make the most money per sales rep. You're not trying to have 10 million people that are making you $100 each. You're trying to have 100 people that are ideally making you $10 million each. So if you're not personalizing your onboarding and your ramp-up process in order to equip this unique individual with the unique things that he needs in order to provide you the most amount of value, then you are leaving tons and tons of money on the table. Now, let's give you some steps to assess. So what I'll do is I'll actually include free PDF in what we do to assess and onboard agents or sales reps. That way you can get just free template that you can plug and play. But I really like to focus on the personality assessment first and foremost, and okay, how do I need to lead, coach, train, develop this person in order to actually move the needle for them, change their behavior. And then the second most important part would be the skills gaps, and okay, what does this person actually need in order to become much better at sales? Because some people have some things naturally, some people have major weaknesses naturally. For example, they could have an accent, and tonality could be the biggest thing that they need to work on. For example, they might have phenomenal tonality, but they could be really bad at just asking uncomfortable questions and asking what they need to in order to get a prospect to change their behavior or their beliefs. So that you have to assess, that you have to figure out, because if you don't figure that out and you don't provide them with the solution, then how are you going to expect them to be successful quickly? Maybe they might figure it out eventually on their own, but it's sure as hell not because of you. So after you've assessed a candidate, or rather assessed them in the onboarding, the last thing you want to do in the onboarding is you want to affirm everything with this candidate. So when it comes to affirmations, it's not so much, shouting in the mirror, shit like that. It's affirming that they have the goals that they say they do. They want the things that they say they do. They're willing to sacrifice the things that they say they do. If I have someone tell me all these things and preach to me, give me their word, give me their commitment on all of these things, there's two things that happen. One, people will typically live up to those expectations that were placed upon them because they don't want to let that person down. But two, it will A, destroy their ego, and B, make them look like just an absolute idiot if I tell you that, hey, I'm going to do all these things, I'm this type of person, and then none of that is true. So after you have affirmed with the candidate that, hey, this is what you want, this is what you're willing to give up, X, Y, and Z, then you finally are in a stage where this candidate is now receptive and able to start making sales and start being trained. So that takes us to the last stage, which is the ramp-up stage. Now, the ramp-up stage, quite honestly, is extremely simple. The only thing is really accountability and you living up to the person that you said you were. Because if you do that, then the rep is significantly more likely to do that themselves. And quite honestly, if you don't do that, I don't think they should. They should probably come to me and get placed with a better opportunity. But regardless, if you lead from the front, you lead by example in the sense of, hey, I'm going to hold you to the standards that I said we have here, then that is going to look good. That is going to look like, hey, this person actually believes in what they're telling me, and that provides me a lot more confidence that I'm working for the right leader. So if you actually just hold people accountable to the things that they said they were going to be and do within their first week to 2 weeks, you are going to get most of them to be successful. Now, the final part there is, again, actually providing the training, providing the skill gaps that you need to close, the belief gaps that you may need to close. And that is literally the easiest part. Because if you know how to sell, you've sold before, and you've sold this product, this offer, this way, this lead type, then you should be able to hop right on a phone call with the person that you're training, see what they're doing, spot exactly what they're doing wrong, and then fix it. And if you can't do that, then managing and leading people is definitely not your forte, not for you. So that is really it. If you do those 3 things, pre-onboarding and ramp up, with the individual sections for each that I discussed, you are going to get the vast majority of people that you hire to end up not only succeeding, but succeeding early, which is very, very important in commission-only sales. Building a competitive model, you need to be able to liquidate, or rather extract, cash from the people that you're hiring very, very quickly. Because if you're not, then I'm going to outspend you. I have partners that are going to outspend you, and you're not going to be able to compete with the price of bringing on a new agent.